Hey there folks, I am Jeff, and this is Tabletop Toolbox, a YouTube channel dedicated to reviewing and generally chatting about board games. In my reviews, I've been known to make a few skits, don a costume or two, and even involve some family pets. But see, the game I'm about to share with you is all about exploring the depths of the ocean, and I've come close to drowning twice in my life, so I think that this is all the water you're going to see from here on out. Sorry, but no Jeffreys are going to be harmed in the making of this video. That's right, today I am parting the proverbial sea to bring you a little closer to Deep Shelf, a heavy economic resource management and engine building game from Richard Keene, which he self-published under the name of Ninth Haven Games. Now, there's a lot that I want to tell you at the start of this video. I want to tell you that Richard was kind enough to provide this review copy. I also want to tell you that Richard's other game, Dinogenics, is one of my top 10 favorite games of all time. But I'm also going to tell you that I will absolutely be sharing my own thoughts on this game, which might be at least one of the reasons why this is one of the most difficult reviews I've ever prepared. And that's not just because of Deep Shelf's 27-page rulebook, or the roughly 700 components in the box. It's also not because of a lengthy setup or a challenging player turn summary, as actually the game suffers from neither of these. It's just because the game is complicated. It's very hard to figure out just what you need to do and then figure out just how you're going to do it. And all this means that for me to really help you understand this game, I have to start at the beginning, where the rulebook explains that it's set in a future, though perhaps not so distant future, where mankind has ravaged the earth to the point that it won't be able to support the human race for much longer. And as such, mankind has decided to build a massive starship to enable us to leave our doomed planet and find a new home to call our own. Yeah, okay, so perhaps it's not the most inventive plot out there, but that's okay. See, in order to build that massive starship, we're going to need a lot of minerals and some state-of-the-art technology, and that's where you come into play. In Deep Shelf, players will represent unique corporations who are definitely not working together to build extensive networks of structures across the ocean bed floor, extracting valuable minerals and a little kelp along the way. These resources can be purchased or sold at the market for variable prices or used to discover new technologies that will guarantee the success of our eventual journey into space, but also empower our underwater adventures here on Earth. Yeah, I know, those were a lot of words, and there's gonna be a few more. You see, each player represents one of 4 different corporations, with a 5th available via an expansion. These corporations have similar components and general actions, but still manage to be quite unique thanks to slight variances on these action cards and a unique superstructure that each of them can build. Each corporation starts the game here, on one of these dock locations, adjacent to 2 spaces in the shallow end of the pool. These spaces are referred to as shelves and come in shallow, deep, and trench flavors. Each faction will have at least 1 submarine and a number of crawlers which can be used to explore the ocean bed floor. If a unit on an unexplored shelf is given the chance to scout, its owner will draw a number of tiles from a bag corresponding to the depth of that shelf and choose one of them to discover at that location. Some of these tiles grant instant rewards when discovered. Some provide bonuses when a building is later built on that shelf, but most of them will provide resources such as kelp, gold, osmium, and palladium, which players can extract using, well,
big underground drills.
Right. Drills are just one of the buildings players can construct in their networks. There are also smelters, which are used to convert raw minerals into refined minerals. There's also laboratories and their accompanying scientists, which are used to boost some of your actions for the remainder of the game. And there are worker complexes. These don't have any associated actions, but instead lower a player's upkeep, which is a cost players must pay when they wish to fire up those underground drills, and which gets more expensive when they build certain buildings, though which buildings and by how much will vary between each corporation. I also mentioned these superstructures, all of which are quite different and usually provide the greatest aspect of asymmetry from one corporation to the next. You have probably already started to get a feeling for the complexity of this game. Lots of pieces, lots to manage, lots going on. Surprisingly, however, the turn structure of the game is pretty simple. Each player has just 6 action cards, each slightly unique to their corporation. They get a 7th when they build their superstructure, providing action specific to that building. On your turn, you'll place 1 card above your player board and follow each step on that card top to bottom, with the exception of any power action at the bottom of the card. You'll then place a 2nd card above your player board, again following every step from top to bottom, but this time including any power action on the card. At the end of your turn, you'll take the first card played back to your hand, but the 2nd card moves to the right, into this overworked space above your player board. The card already in that space from your previous turn is also returned to your hand. So basically, after the first turn of the game, you'll always have 1 card locked in the overworked space on your player board, which will return to your hand at the end of your subsequent turn. Now, as I mentioned, each of these cards are unique from corporation to corporation, so each card will do slightly different things. Also, each of these actions have little qualifiers, little conditions that may alter costs or provide benefits to or because of an opponent, bonus abilities from your scientists, etc. You might build a building, paying cold, crunchy cash, or use your minerals to expand your tube network and build crawlers. You can move your crawlers through your tube network, while your submarine is less restricted, but by default can't access the deeper shelves of the ocean. You can extract resources from the ocean floor, and then use smelters to process those raw materials into valuable, refined minerals. You may even get to refine a resource or 2 sitting in storage on your player board. Raw minerals can be used to build those tubes and your crawlers, while refined minerals are necessary for research, and you may need either to build your corporation's superstructure. But you can also buy or sell resources through the market, with prices that vary as refined resources and kelp are bought or sold. Speaking of research, this charcuterie of technology features a variety of abilities that players can slot into their player boards. These often provide rule-breaking benefits, discounts to various actions, or even endgame scoring opportunities. Yeah, listen, I warned you that there were going to be a lot of words here, and I'll give you a little heads up. We are starting page 4 of an 8-page script that I've completely rewritten 3 times, and that's because there is so much to explain about how to play this game, and none of it neatly segues into how it feels to play this game. To expand across this prolific ocean, managing your industrious corporation, all with just a few seemingly meager actions at your disposal. And the reason that this review has been so difficult to put together is that this game is so difficult to describe. It uses mostly straightforward actions to do completely normal things, and yet it just ends up feeling so hard. It is filled with difficult decisions and easily flubbed calculations. On our first attempt to play this, we were 2 hours in before I had a single turn that felt productive, when I was able to extract or refine more than just 1 measly mineral. It would take me 3 games of Deep Shelf before I managed to research 2 technologies in a single turn. And we have yet to master the repressively tight economy, where even a fruitful, high-value sale can be washed away with a single infrastructure upgrade. All but one of the times I've played this game has been with a good friend of mine, Daniel, with whom I had also played several rounds of Voidfall last year. And towards the end of our first play of Deep Shelf, we found ourselves comparing these 2 big box games. Both of these act as 3X strategy games, Voidfall lacking exploration, while Deep Shelf is without any form of combat. Honestly, the better way to go if I had the choice. Both rely on clever card play. Both require careful planning to wring the most out of each one of your actions, and both feel equally rewarding when you pull off that big successful turn. But those turns occur less frequently in Deep Shelf, and to be honest, players can sometimes find themselves completely stuck. Take a look at this scenario. In your previous turn, you moved your submarine to a new shelf and made a small discovery that gave you $2, but no new source of valuable minerals. Submarines act as mobile drills and can extract resources. You have enough money to extract at this time, but your submarine is on a useless tile, and only one of your extractors is on a tile with anything left to claim. If you extracted now, you'd spend a bunch of money just to get one ore. You can't move to a new location because your move card is locked up until your next turn. You could go ahead and build your next extractor, but then you won't have enough money to actually extract. And yeah, you're kind of stuck. Alternatively, you could be in a situation like this, where you want to build a building here, but first have to build a new tube here. However, the build action card requires you to build buildings before allowing you to build new tubes. So you'd have to take the build action twice, once to build the tube and then again to build the building, which means you won't want to use this as the second action in your first turn, which means the game is forcing your hand at how you trigger your actions. The only way around this rule is a level 3 technology that you could be quite a ways away from getting if someone didn't do so already. Obviously this doesn't happen with every turn, but even later in the game, even with multiple upgrades to your engine and a well-established network of infrastructure and facilities, you can still find yourself completely burning a turn, getting a single dollar or extracting a single resource because it's the least inefficient action you can think of taking at that time. In a recent playthrough with Daniel, he had finished his turn and only half paying attention. I said, "That it?" And he goes, "Yeah, but don't say it like that." Speaking of playthroughs, I had the experience of getting to play this game online with Deep Shelf's designer Richard Keene using Tabletop Simulator. And in that playthrough, I did get to see how this game can be played. I saw someone build a powerful corporation, running resources all over the place, building a plethora of technologies, and running up quite a score. And let's be clear, that person was not me. So what if you aren't the person who designed this game? Well, for starters, you might struggle a bit with the iconography, like these research tracks with spaces that provide bonus points to the first and second player who reaches the end of the track. Except that these spaces aren't the last space of each track. This space is. And so I learned that I had been wasting actions moving to spaces I didn't need to move to. You might also find the scoring to be a bit wonky. Because despite all this complicated engine building and intricate dancing around the barbed wire tight economy, the majority of points at the end of the game come in the form of area majorities for the shallow and deep areas of the board, top of the track rewards for the 3 research tracks, and majority bonuses for the 3 resource types of technology upgrades. Only some of the corporations in this game have unique end of game scoring bonuses that players can work towards. Now, Richard actually explained that this is the result of significant play testing, that players seemed less interested in working towards the goals of their corporation and were more intent on trying to build across the ocean bed floor. But I have to wonder, how much of that was on purpose? What if playtesters didn't focus on corporation goals because they felt far beyond the player's reach? Another notable quote from my buddy Daniel came in a playthrough after taking a few months away from the game. He sat there, leafing back and forth across his small hand of action cards and said, "How do I get points again? Because I'm pretty sure I'm doing that thing where I'm not getting any points." But it's not just the complexity. Some corporations have less buildings to build than others, making it very difficult to win the area majority scoring. And if they're up against a corporation that also has endgame scoring, it just doesn't feel like a fair fight. And speaking of fighting, whilst I did mention that there's no combat in Deep Shelf, there is this guy, the Depth Dragon. I've waited until now to mention this guy because I could never figure out a good place to fit him into the conversation about this game. And to explain him first requires discussing an entire aspect of this game I've left out until now, the continued exploitation of Earth. See, as players extract resources or build environmentally unfriendly buildings, they'll force this exploitation track to climb. Along the way, players will trigger exploitation events, giving a small benefit to the player that triggered the event, but allowing other players to manipulate the market and this Depth Dragon. Now, this guy serves to represent the idea of Mother Nature kinda getting back at these corporations hell-bent on destroying the Earth. But it doesn't really feel like it. Some of the edges on this nicely detailed miniature are colored, and the player who ends up next to a red edge will have their upkeep cost increased. But maybe that player isn't the one who's been exploiting the Earth the most. Maybe they just got caught at a bad place at the wrong time. Or maybe you've watched that player struggle the entire game to get something going, and suddenly you have to decide if you're going to be the a-hole who makes it just a little bit harder for them. I don't know. This guy just seems a little out of place, and he ends up feeling like that part of a movie that probably could have gotten left on the cutting room floor. It's a bit ironic too, as when I first saw this piece on the original Kickstarter campaign, I assumed the game had a horror theme, and given the underwater setting, which I explained my discomfort with at the beginning of this video, I immediately dismissed the idea of backing this game. But there's actually something else, something that I've finally realized I could live without in Deep Shelf, and it took that play with the designer to figure out what it was. The locked out, overworked action card above your board. I've realized that it's that single rule of the game, deciding which action I'm willing to wait 2 turns to take again, that turns my brain into a Commodore 64.
Old man reference.
In those moments, you're not just planning 1 or 2 actions ahead. You're trying to plan 2 entire turns ahead, and that makes the game drag. It's where players, well, at least this player, tends to get stuck the most. And the thing is, unlike in the aforementioned Voidfall, there often aren't other ways to get something done. You have 1 card that lets you extract minerals, 1 card that lets you use the market. Some corporations have extra ways to move or maybe build a building, but most of the time you'll simply be unable to do what you want to do until 2 turns later. I like the idea of having a power action that you can't always trigger. I like the timing that emphasizes, and those actions often feel powerful enough to justify a cooldown effect. But the rest of that card being locked up, especially if there isn't a power action in play, just feels unnecessarily damning. But despite all of this, despite the complexity of the razor-thin margin of error around your order of operations, despite the awkward depth-dragging component or the frustration around a needlessly locked action card, the one weird, confusing, and inexplicable challenge with Deep Shelf is how much both Daniel and I have found ourselves wanting to play it again. Like the mysterious depths of the ocean, we have found ourselves drawn back again and again to see what discoveries await us. Not in these bags of tiles or the confusing iconography or this persnickety little dragon, but in the puzzle presented by these unique corporations and these simple yet inexplicably elusive action cards. Deep Shelf kind of feels like one of those trinkety puzzles that you keep getting so close to putting together again, but always have one little piece that's out of place. It feels like that Dvorak cello concerto with that one passage that I just never could quite nail down. So maybe quite like Dvorak's cello concerto in B minor, performed here by Yo-Yo Ma, what Deep Shelf commands of its players is perhaps just a little bit of extra practice. I've never been a fan of the word masterpiece when it comes to board games, especially in this day and age. There's always another expansion, a new reprint, an upgrade pack, a big box, etc. But I'll tell you, I've listened to Richard talk about this game. I have felt his emotions as I've explained my challenges with understanding the paths he hoped players would find in this game. And I do believe that for him, this may very well be his To Kill a Mockingbird or his Mona Lisa. Now, to be fair, every work of art has its detractors, and Deep Shelf is certainly not the game for everyone. But I will add that Richard has released a number of expansions for Dinogenics, each of which added both new ideas and quality of life improvements for that game. So I'm curious to see what could be downriver for Deep Shelf, even if honestly, there is still a ton for me to discover in this box. I mean, I haven't even mentioned the 4-mission campaign mode that can be played solo or cooperatively. And it's again, perhaps ironic, as I've practiced writing this review 3 times, and yet still haven't figured out how to finish it. I feel like it's taken me months to get here, so I'll just say this. Go and check out Ninth Haven Games if you'd like to get a copy of Deep Shelf. I believe you can still get it with the upgrades like metal coins and the Dinogenics crossover promo pack. You can also check out episodes 38, 47, 57, and 58 of the Weekly Ratchet right here on Tabletop Toolbox, as I discussed each of my playthroughs of Deep Shelf candidly and perhaps in far too much detail. Until next time, thanks for watching. And you know what? I did it. I'm done. I'm dry. I didn't drown. And I saved myself a ton of money not buying that scuba suit. Cheers. And you may need either of them to build your corporation's superstructure. But too much water.